What's up, fellas? So today we're going to talk shop about 5 rules that you should be following with your training. Now, these are going to apply to all experience levels, but this is going to be especially helpful if you're on the newer side. These are things that I wish I started doing when I started off training, and I would have gotten better results. Got the idea from a Chad Evans Centopani video, but these are going to be a little bit different from the basic just eat hard, sleep hard, train hard, things that you're used to hearing. But I'm going to link his video in the description because it's really good. Number 1 has got to be eat like a champion. Eat the way that you want to be, not where you're at. Now, I know I said I wish I had done these sooner, but I kind of sort of did this one as a kid. I was a rotund child, okay? But it was like low quality garbage foods. We're talking like vats of ice cream mixed with milk to make like a DIY milkshake. It's not high quality foods. But eat like a champion is a little bit different from just, eat to support your training, which I think is absolutely something that you should do and is like the basics. But what I mean by that is a lot of times when you're newer, you can get away with, sourcing your protein from low quality meat, processed stuff, things of that nature. But why not eat like someone who is intermediate? Why not start to create that habit? Why not start to source all of your protein at least from single ingredient foods, whole foods, fish, beef, chicken, tofu, whatever you prefer, beans, whatever floats your boat. Why not start to do that and to build that habit early? It's only going to set you up for long-term success. Much the same, if you're intermediate, why not start to not only ensure that we're getting our proteins from whole foods, but we're getting most of our carbs from whole foods. We're getting all of our vitamins in, that we're doing things like making sure that we're digesting our food well. Something big for me is that I only eat foods that digest really well. And I take like probiotic supplements to supplement that. Obviously, I drink freaking kombucha. I do everything that I can to make sure that I have as little to no intestinal distress as possible, and that I'm digesting the food and actually getting the most out of the food and the nutrients that I'm intaking. You always want to eat a little bit better than you are and ultimately where you want to be at. And dude, eating obviously is super important because protein, carbs, fats, these are the things that support our training, that allow us to follow programs like Beast Slayer and your double progressions, your triple, your linear, whatever you're doing, it allows that to function, right? So the two have a causal relationship with one another. And if you do both as well as you can, you're well on your way to getting jacked and stacked. Number 2 has got to be find what works for you. It's just a truism that you're going to end up doing most exercises at least once to try it out, see how you feel about it. But with time and experience, you should be able to name 3 different exercises per muscle group that just fuck you up big time. They do what they need to do. They understood the assignment. Now with programs like Beast Slayer, and when you run them, which by the way, I made a full video breakdown for, you can find that in the description as well, and I'll link to it at the end of the video. I start you off with variations that work well for most people, right? And then I guide you to switch them every 6 to 8 weeks. Now, there's 2 really cool things with that. One, first and foremost, I'm giving you variations that are going to hit the mark, whether they're the best exercises for you or they do them well enough so that you can experiment on your own with variations. It sets you up with that. And then it'll also guide you, like I said, to switch them when the time comes. Now, when it does come time to switch them, you can either add a variation that you want to try with and experiment on your own that isn't on the program, or you can just do another variation that I list on that drop down, and then you're good to go and you're well on your way to getting jacked, like I said. The best thing about Beast Slayer, in my opinion, is that it is built on sound principles, meaning that not every piece and part and cog in the system has to be working at 100% efficiency for you to be seeing forward progress on this program. Meaning if you're doing exercises, let's just say you switch to one that isn't as good as the one that you just started off with doing on the program, but it's good enough to get the job done, you're feeling the muscles well enough, you're gonna make progress on the program. So this is the program for people that want to find themselves a little bit with regards to what exercises work best for them. And it gives you the space to be able to do that and still make great progress as well. Number 3 has got to be know how to create momentum in your training. There are so many ways that we could talk about how to do this, and there's so many different very educated, very qualified people that all have a different way of saying it. Do you listen to Dr. Mike and use reps in reserve most of the time? Do you train to failure a lot of the time? Do you use high reps, low reps? The thing about it is that methods are many and principles are few. I think it was Dave Tate that said on a table talk one time, with regards to cues on barbell movements is that there are thousands of ways to say the same shit to somebody that ends up adding up to the same cue. So with squats, for example, there's 1,000,001 ways to say keep your knees over your toes and keep the movement in your quads. You have to find the one that makes sense to you and vibes with your psychology. Does that make sense? So with that being said, RAR training, like reps and reserve training, which you see in Renaissance periodization and what they espouse a lot, is something that would work really well for a fellow like Jared Feather because it vibes well with his psychology. He's into stuff like that, so it works well for him. But someone like, GVS, for example, who is allergic to leaving reps in reserve, that really wouldn't work as well for him as a holistic system. The biggest thing though, no matter what you're doing, is that the principle here is that we're leaving just enough room to make progress on something. Now, it may not seem that way with the way GVS trains, but I watch his Instagram stories and it's evident to me how he does that. He leaves room for him to do more forced reps, to clean up those forced reps, to make them like, full range of motion, regular reps. There are different things he does to leave room for progress while still training really hard in a way that makes sense to him. Now, with the Berserk method, which is how I train and how I teach people how to train ever since we made that first video a few years ago, I like to take a hybrid approach to those things in a way that makes sense to me and in a way that it allows me to teach people how to figure out what's best for them. So when it comes to our strength work, I like taking a basic linear periodization. You can find that in the description in Beast Slayer in the resources tab on the very first page of it. But basically, you're starting off light, you keep reps in the tank each set, you have 3 or 4 sets, and you're really focusing on good quality technique and building momentum up until you get to like 90, 93, 95%, 100%, 101%, basically to something heavy where you're just gonna chip a PR at the very end. It's a lot like, if I could use an anime example, in Dragon Ball Z, they're not like fighting each other to the death when they're training for the androids. They're training hard, but they're holding back while they train with one another because it ain't time to fight nobody to the death yet. They're gonna fight Cell and the androids to death, but freaking Goku is not gonna freaking, go all out on Yamcha, bro. He's gonna meet him at his level and they're gonna keep a little bit in the tank and build each other up that way. It's the same kind of thing. We get in good volume with good technique. We ball out when it's time to ball out. That's the long and the short of it. Now again, those are solely for movements where the sole purpose is to increase the number at the end of the day. Now for movements where our sole goal is our physical development, like getting our muscles bigger, it's similar in principle, but different in application. For those types of movements, like our bodybuilding movements, our accessories and things of that nature, we go to failure a lot more often, but ultimately with a double and a triple progression, again, which you can find in that Beast Slayer program, a simple explanation for both. You're leaving some reps in the tank the first week because if you didn't, you'd have nowhere to go with it. You'd have no way to reliably increase volume week to week. And that's the most common thing when people run it that they neglect to do is that very first week, they just ball out on that first set and next week they have nowhere to go. And then finally, for like our small scale exercises, like our abs, calves, neck, forearms, things that I like to call floater exercises, which we just freely superset with anything else on the program to make sure that we're doing it in a timely manner. Those are exercises where I'm just like, oonga boonga, beat the books, just beat the crap out of the movement, go as hard as you can. But that element of creating momentum and progression is still there. Since we're going full oonga boonga, a lot of those reps may start to get a little choppy at the end of the set, which is perfectly fine as long as you're doing it in a way that's safe. But week to week, we're either aiming to clean up those reps or get more reps. Both will lead to muscle growth. And again, that's specifically for things like abs, calves, forearms, things of that nature. We're going to failure often, almost every time actually, and our metric for progress is just cleaning it up and adding to it when we can. 4, care about your well-being. Now that's a holistic thing. So like it's interconnected between your mental health and your physical well-being. For example, if you're not going to bed on time consistently and you care about doing that and it's within your control to go to bed on time, you should slap yourself on the wrist and want to do better. I always like to say that like eventually you're going to get tired of your own shit. We've all had our moments in life where we're like, dude, I know I should be doing better. Let's do better. If you care about getting better, eventually you're gonna get tired of your own shit and you're gonna do better. That's just been my personal experience with myself, my friends, my family. Now, again, if you care about eating good food and you're able to cook something and you don't because you just didn't make the time for it, if you care about it, eventually you're gonna get tired of your own shit. You're gonna meal prep. It's the same thing. All of that is super important. So it's just important, as I said, holistically for just having good well-being in general. But if you want to get extremely beefy, bro, like you want to get big as fuck, or if you just, all jokes aside, want to get a little bit healthier, all of that is really important to supporting, your stress levels, your sleep, everything that adds up to you recovering from your training, wanting to do well with your training, having the motivation to do well. All those things are super important. All right, fellas, last but not least, you have to love what you do and have a why, like a purpose behind what you do it. To make a long story short, I'm gonna tell a little story and then just relate it back to training, because I have to talk about my why, where my background is with training, just to be able to relate it back to you. But my history and my relationship with training was like an up and down. It wasn't always a positive one. Let me just say, to preface this all, that motivation is very important. Motivation, whether that comes from you or something outside of yourself, is just as important as discipline. Like they're causally linked. Like you can't have one without the other. That being said, my motivation for training was not one that was positive. I think that your motivation should be positive. It should be productive. It should be something that ultimately you do it and your best interest is being fulfilled. I was training because myself, my younger brothers, we got viciously bullied for things that we have no control over. Just the way that we look, race-based stuff, the fact that we were weird. We're talking about fucking Dragon Ball Z when people are talking about, music videos and shit like that we weren't interested in. So I was tired of that happening. And as I said, I have younger brothers that are just as confused about this as I am, but I don't have someone to look to protect me. Like I can tell my dad, but what is he gonna do? Beat some kids up? The onus is on me to solve this. So you have to engage with things at the level that you're at. To me, it was, I want to create a body that can better protect myself and protect my family. So that's what I did. I had a weight set in the basement. I was extremely motivated. My father wouldn't let me use it unless he was there. And he was either at work or asleep from being at work. So he wouldn't be able to come down and work out with me often. So I went down there by myself, knowing how dangerous it was. He was like, if you drop the bar and I can't save you, like you could hurt yourself. Like people die from that. You see it sometimes on YouTube, or you see someone that dies in like a training accident. But I'm like, what I'm living through is almost worse than that. You see what I'm saying? So if I have something within my power to change that, I'm going to. So in one summer, I'm about 14, this is going into high school, I get to a 275 for 2 bench. I could do like 80 push-ups. I had learned a little bit of boxing from this dude D that I had met at a summer job. So I was ready. And I get to high school, and what I wanted most was just to not be bullied anymore for shit that I had no control over. And I got that, but I also got something else that came with it. I had done the wrong things for the wrong reason. So I had a larger body, like I had gone through a growth spurt. I'm jacked. The freaking teachers think I'm a grown man, and I'm strong and I have everything that I thought I wanted, but I was still quiet. I was still shy. I was still that kid that was getting bullied on the inside. And when you have all that on top of being fucking jacked when everybody's a pencil neck, they just assume things about you. So people still kind of just distance themselves from me. And I'm like, fuck, I can't win for losing. So I definitely don't want to get any bigger. I'm not going to train anymore. I didn't train at all from 9th grade to 20 years old, after high school. And I wouldn't train again until my younger brother, who had at that point joined the Army. He was 68 Whiskey. It's a combat medic. It's the MOS name. And he was fucking up on his PT test. And he's like, dude, I need your help. Long story short, that's where I started where I had a bad relationship with training. I hated it. It started to become something more positive. The why then was, well, I'm gonna help my brother better himself. He's out of shape. He's failed his PT tests. I'm running right with him, and this shit is just as hard to me. And it became about helping improve himself and improving myself to keep up with him. Now, eventually, Our friends see the changes in us. They see us getting all lean and fit and whatever, and now they want to join in. They want to start running with us. We ran, we did bodyweight exercises, and then we would run some more. And we did that like every day. Got to the point where we're running the better part of 15 miles a day and working out 3 times a day, bro. There was no program. It was just work hard. And it started to become something that I really, really loved. And what really cemented it, what really concrete, like this is just something that I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. We do whatever we can to work out at that point, right? So we're working out in a buddy's freaking apartment gym, like his mom's apartment's gym. They kicked us out. I'm like, dude, these universities got freaking gyms. Let's go in there and run up in there and do our workouts there. They eventually kicked us out. We just like act like we went there and then walked right into it. And they're like, do you even go here? I'm like, no, I'm not even gonna lie to you, I don't. They kicked us out. So eventually we had to get a gym membership. We went to LA Fitness, and mind you, I said that in the past I'd worked up to a 275 for 2 bench in a summer, you know what I'm saying, when I was a teenager. So I'm like, load up the bench, like the freaking Scott Steiner clip where he's like, load up the bench, 585 for starters. And it stapled me. But that motivated me because I knew that I could improve myself, and I liked and I wanted to improve myself now at this point. So I'm like, I'm gonna surpass this. And it was just basic bench bro training. I got to a 315 bench shortly after that. That was my first 315 bench. And I've had my periods of maintaining athleticism and strength and trying different things out. But what really became a fixture in my life at that point was training. And training has been something that's with me through thick and thin, good and bad, good times and bad times. Times where I'm my best self, times where I'm my worst self, military, poverty, everything in between, dude. It's just been something that's been here with me. Even really back then when I was a teenager, it was still there with me. I just didn't appreciate it for what it was. Now your why doesn't have to be profound like that, but it should be personal, and it should be something that you can speak to and something that gets you motivated. Those are my 5 though, fellas. You tell me what your 5 are, and we can go ahead and chop it up in the comments. You watch these videos now that you've watched this one. Have a great day.